And our next film is The Raid 2, which Nigel's going to review for us.
Needless to say, it's a sequel for those of you who haven't seen The Raid. The Raid was a film put together by a Welsh-born director called Gareth Evans and a very slight but extremely lethal martial arts actor called Iko Uwais. And it was basically a very simple setup. There was a building, an old abandoned building. It was occupied by a kind of crime gang. It was sort of like a fortress. And the main character was just a kind of a minor character in a SWAT team that went into this building to kind of to crack it open and try and arrest the guys. It's essentially a kind of 2-hour fight sequence. This is slightly more sophisticated. It's 2.5 hours long. It's much more ambitious. What they've got to do is they've got to go right back to the beginning. So they take the character who's called Rama. He's got to get himself arrested, put into prison, befriend the son of a crime boss, and then use that to infiltrate the crime gang and break it open from the inside. So there is quite a lot of plot, but also, if we listen to a clip, you'll get a sense of mostly what it's about.
That is brilliant.
That is pretty much the sound of it, I have to say. I mean, on the one hand, it has these ambitions to be this kind of huge, epic story about a guy going into this crime gang, exposing not only the gang, of course, but all of the political corruption that surrounds the gang, the people who have been dragged into it. There are various little subplots that flesh out these things. But fundamentally, what people have paid their money to see is up there on the screen. There are 7 or 8 sort of major fight scenes. There is one, a penultimate one, I won't spoil it for you, but it happens in a kitchen, which is without doubt the most sustained and most brilliant fight scene I've ever seen. I mean, it's just like pure choreographed ballet, but with violence.
It's important to say it is one of the most violent films I've ever seen. And
it definitely earned its 18 certificate.
And there's hardly any women characters in it, and the ones that are treated appallingly. Having said that, it is, and I've never seen a film like this. I mean, it's not my genre. I was blown away by it. I mean, I just thought it was amazing. I mean, just the athleticism of the actors, but also the choreography and the wit inside the choreography. And the film, it's so confident in itself. There's one fight in a prison yard which is full of mud, which is like, just an unbelievable sort of mess of bodies everywhere, but filmed in such a wonderful way. I mean, I sat there thinking, as soon as it came on, I thought, oh no, I'm going to hate this. And I thought it was brilliant. I mean, just because I didn't know it was 2.5 hours, it was the opposite to The Quiet Ones. I think it went by like that for me. But it was just staggering. Boyd?
Phenomenal. And I'm a big fan of the original, I think. But the great thing about the original was that it was confined to this one setting, this tower block. And it was an extraordinary, as Nigel said, it was basically a mega fight after fight after fight in this place. And that was great. And you thought, well, that's a great premise. It's been executed brilliantly. Incredible talent of the director and his team of choreographers and all of that. And you thought, how are they're going to top that? And what he's done is he has made it much more expansive. It's quite a complicated storyline, actually. All the stuff about police corruption and going undercover and all of that gets quite complex later on. But it's still the most thrillingly exciting, viscerally amazing, extraordinary action film of recent years. And not only, you mentioned the fights, it's got the greatest car chase, I think, since like the French Connection.
Unbelievable.
It's brilliant. And you get, not only do you get this extraordinary car chase, you get a fight within a car in the middle of the car chase, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably violent, but it doesn't.
It's not a date movie, is it?
It's not one. No, it's not a date movie unless you happen to be lucky enough to have a partner who loves action films so much and doesn't mind limbs being torn off and all of that. But it's just extraordinarily entertaining. And, if you can cope with the violence, and there's something, I didn't find it offensive. There's sometimes, in films, gratuitously violent films where the blood is all CGI, there's kind of a gritty realism to the extraordinary violence that for me made it, I don't know, I felt it was acceptable. And it's an amazing achievement, but what a talent, just to kind of 2.5 hours of relentlessness. But I was exhilarated.
There was one scene in a karaoke bar that I suddenly started to get quite uncomfortable about being in the cinema and watching and sort of, because by that time I was really enjoying the film and I thought this is great. And then there's this one scene with 2 girls in the karaoke bar and I thought, oh, I'm not. This is tipped somewhere else now.
And that was a bit like the film Only God Forgives as well.
Yes.
That scene, which is a deeply uncomfortable film to watch. I found that I couldn't cope with that whole film. And you're right, that scene, you felt it was going into that territory, which was
and then it goes out of there and it carries on in what it does best. I've got some correspondence here. I've got one from Dan Pawley. He says the best thing and the worst thing about this film is that it isn't The Raid Part 2. Gareth Evans is to be praised for not delivering a carbon copy follow-up. But this film is so different, it really doesn't feel like a sequel. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if an existing script had been retrofitted to include Rama character from The Raid. This time round, it is an organised crime saga of two rival outfits and the cocky young upstart trying to bring them both down, with our hero as an undercover cop in the middle. I mean, that's what you were saying. I mean, I didn't see The Raid one, but this is, I just blown away by this.
Yeah.
But tell me about this guy, the main guy. What's his name? The guy who plays Rama?
Iko Uwais. I mean, the thing is that the guy is not a big guy. He's a very slight guy. I can't remember the name of the particular Indonesian martial art of which he is an exponent, but clearly he has mastered all aspects of it, both the unarmed combat and the armed combat, because that's the first thing to say. It's not necessarily just a chop socky move. There's a lot of weaponry. There's a character, for example, played brilliantly, I thought, by Julia Still, called Hammer Girl, who comes straight out of a kind of Quentin Tarantino film, really, and earns her name and then some. But I do think that actually Iko Uwais, I mean, a lot of people thought he wasn't a great actor in The Raid, but I do think he's shaped up a bit in this. He didn't, I mean, to be fair to him, he was overwhelmed by the level of violence in the first film because it was so relentless. As Boyd said, it was all took place in one situation, in one building. So it was just one long fight scene in a sense. Here he had a bit more chance to show his acting chops, and I thought he did a good job.
I did too, and I thought from a directing point of view, I thought just it was put together in such a
what a story!
way.
A Welsh guy ends up directing these spectacular Indonesian martial arts films.
It's just unbelievable.
It's brilliant.
It's like Kurosawa or Scorsese. It's got all those great things in it. It really brings all that to it. So as we say, it's a terribly violent film. It's really full on. So go to it with caution. But I thought the execution of it was wonderful.